She paid his bus fare out of kindness, never imagining that simple act would entangle her with one of the wealthiest men in the city, a man deliberately hiding behind worn jeans and a fabricated life. When Nia discovers Ethan's billion-dollar secret, her world shatters into pieces, trust evaporating like morning dew under a merciless sun. What would you do if the person you were falling for had built your entire relationship on a foundation of lies? How can love survive when one person has everything and the other has only her pride? The bus that brought them together might just be what tears them apart forever, unless the truth can build a bridge between their worlds. Subscribe now and drop a comment telling me if you'd forgive someone who hid their true identity to win your heart, because this roller coaster of love, betrayal, and redemption is just getting started. Nia Brooks squeezed onto the crowded city bus, her feet aching after a long shift at Rosie's cafe. The smell of coffee still clung to her clothes. She dug into her purse, fingers searching for coins while she balanced herself against the jostling of the bus. "Come on," she muttered, counting the quarters and dimes in her palm. The day's tips had been light, and payday was still 3 days away. The bus driver waited with thinning patience as the line inched forward. When her turn came, Nia dropped her coins into the fare box, the metallic clinks confirming she had just enough. Behind her, a tall man in a plain grey t-shirt and jeans tapped his card against the reader. The machine beeped twice and flashed red. "Sorry, sir," the driver said, not sounding sorry at all. "Card's not working." The man tried again. Another harsh beep. His shoulders tensed as people behind him started to sigh and shuffle their feet. "I don't carry cash," he said quietly, a flush creeping up his neck. Nia had already taken a step toward the back of the bus, but something made her pause. The man wasn't angry or demanding, just embarrassed. Without thinking twice, she reached back into her purse. "I got it," she said, dropping more coins into the box. The man looked up, startled. His blue eyes met hers with surprise. "You don't have to," he started. "It's nothing," Nia said with a small smile. "We've all been there." "Thank you," he said, his voice warm with genuine gratitude. Nia nodded and made her way to an empty seat near the back. The bus lurched forward, and she grabbed a pole to steady herself. As she settled in, Nia noticed the man had found a seat across the aisle from her. He was looking at her with a curious expression, as if trying to solve a puzzle. She studied him briefly from the corner of her eye. He was handsome in an understated way, clean-shaven with short brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. His clothes were simple, but clean. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed money or status. Just an ordinary guy having a bad moment with his bus pass. The stranger caught her glance and smiled. Nia smiled back, then turned to look out the window. "That was really kind," he said, his voice carrying across the narrow aisle. Most people would have just moved on. Nia shrugged. "It's no big deal, just a bus fare." "I'm Ethan," he offered. "Nia. Nice to meet you, Nia." A comfortable silence fell between them as the bus rumbled through the city streets. The evening sun slanted through the windows, turning the dust motes in the air into tiny golden sparks. The bus hit a pothole, jolting everyone forward. Nia's purse slipped from her lap, spilling a few items onto the floor. Ethan reached down and picked up her keychain, a small ceramic elephant with colorful patterns painted on it. "This is cool," he said, handing it back. Their fingers brushed as she took it. "Thanks. My aunt brought it back from her trip to South Africa, said elephants bring good luck." "Is it working?" Ethan asked with a small grin. Nia laughed. "Jury's still out on that one." The bus slowed at her stop. Nia stood and gathered her things. "This is me," she said, suddenly shy. "Have a good evening." "You too, Nia," Ethan replied, watching her step off the bus. "And thanks again." As the bus pulled away, Ethan craned his neck to watch which direction she walked. Something about her kindness, offered without hesitation to a complete stranger, had touched him deeply. In his world, people rarely did anything without expecting something in return. He made a mental note of the stop, Maple and 4th Street. Perhaps their paths would cross again. 3 days later, Nia wiped down the counter at Rosie's cafe, her mind drifting as the afternoon crowd thinned out. The bell above the door jingled, and she looked up automatically, a customer service smile ready on her face. The smile turned genuine when she recognized the man from the bus. Ethan. He looked different in daylight, more confident, his blue eyes brighter. "Well, look who it is," Naya said. "Bus guy." Ethan laughed. "That's me. I was walking by and saw this place." He glanced around the cozy cafe with its mismatched chairs and local artwork on the walls. "Thought I'd grab some coffee." They both knew it wasn't a coincidence, but neither acknowledged it. "What can I get you?" Nia asked, tucking a strand of her dark, curly hair behind her ear. "What do you recommend?" "Our house blend is good, or if you want something fancy, the caramel latte is my guilty pleasure." "House blend sounds perfect," Ethan said, pulling out his wallet. This time, he had cash ready. He handed her a $10 EEI bill for a $3 coffee and waved away the change. "Keep it." "Thanks," Nia said, dropping the money into the tip jar. She turned to prepare his coffee. Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her work. "So, do you always save strangers on buses, or was I just lucky?" Nia smiled as she poured his coffee. "You caught me on a generous day." She handed him the steaming cup. "You weren't having much luck with that card of yours." "Technology," Ethan shrugged. "Never works when you need it to." A comfortable silence fell between them as Ethan took his first sip. "This is really good." "Told you," Naya said, pride in her voice. She'd been the one to convince her boss to switch to this particular roast. The cafe was quiet now, just a couple of students with laptops in the corner. Ethan glanced around again, more carefully this time. "Nice place." "It pays the bills," Naya said. "Mostly." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "Well, thank you for the coffee recommendation. Maybe I'll see you around." "Maybe," Naya agreed, trying not to sound too hopeful. There was something about him, a gentleness, a sincerity, that intrigued her. As Ethan left, he took one last look at her over his shoulder and smiled. Nia found herself smiling back long after the door had closed behind him. That evening, Nia sat cross-legged on her bed, phone pressed to her ear as she talked to her best friend. "He just happened to find the cafe where I work," Nia said, trying to sound skeptical, but unable to keep the smile from her voice. "Girl, please," Tasha replied with a laugh. "That man tracked you down. Is he cute?" "He's—" Nia hesitated, picturing Ethan's kind eyes and warm smile. "Yeah, he's cute, in a regular guy kind of way." "Regular guys are underrated," Tasha said. "So what's his deal? What does he do?" "I don't know. We didn't really talk about that." "But he left you a big tip?" $7 on a $3 coffee, Nia confirmed. Tasha hummed thoughtfully. "Either he's really into you or he's bad at math," Nia laughed. "Or maybe he's just a nice guy." "Maybe," Tasha said, sounding unconvinced. "But nice guys who hunt you down at work? That's either the beginning of a rom-com or a horror movie." "It's not like that," Nia protested. "It was sweet." "Uh-huh. Well, when he comes back tomorrow, because he will, get more info. Job, family, criminal record, the basics." "You're ridiculous," Nia said, but she was smiling. "I gotta go. Aunt Marla's calling me for dinner." "Keep me posted," Tasha insisted before hanging up. Nia set her phone down and stared at the ceiling, wondering if Ethan would indeed come back to the cafe. Part of her hoped he would. Across town, Ethan sat, in his sparsely furnished apartment, typing a message to his brother, Jake. "Met someone interesting today, actually a few days ago. She helped me out when my wallet was empty." Jake's reply came quickly. "Another gold digger figured out who you are." Ethan frowned at the phone. "No, she has no idea. And she's different." "They're all different until they see the bank account," Jake texted back. "Cynical much? Realistic. Be careful, little brother." Ethan set his phone down with a sigh. Jake wasn't wrong to be cautious. Their family's wealth had attracted plenty of people with ulterior motives over the years. It was why Ethan had started this experiment 6 months ago, living simply, away from the family empire, in an ordinary apartment under a partial pseudonym. Ethan Walker was common enough that it didn't immediately connect to Walker Enterprises unless you were looking for it. He walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there was Nia's apartment. He'd seen which direction she'd headed after getting off the bus. Without consciously deciding to, he grabbed his jacket and headed out for a walk. 20 minutes later, Ethan found himself on Nia's street. He didn't know exactly which building was hers, and he wasn't planning to look. He just wanted to feel connected to this woman who had shown him such simple, unexpected kindness as he walked past a modest brick apartment building. He saw her. Nia was sitting on a small balcony, looking at her phone, a mug in her other hand. The warm light from inside framed her like a painting. Ethan quickened his pace, not wanting to be spotted staring like some creep. But he smiled to himself as he turned the corner. He would definitely be going back to Rosie's cafe. 2 days later, Ethan returned to the cafe during the quiet afternoon lull. Nia was wiping down a table when he walked in, and her face brightened when she saw him. "You're back," she said. "The coffee was good," Ethan replied with a shrug. "Just the coffee," Nia teased, surprising herself with her boldness. Ethan laughed. The company wasn't bad either. She led him to the counter and took his order, house blend again. This time, when she handed him the cup, she asked, "Do you have a few minutes?" "My break starts soon. I've got nowhere to be," Ethan said, looking pleased. 10 minutes later, they sat at a small table outside the cafe. The September air was perfect, warm without being hot, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of the flowers from the planters lining the sidewalk. "So," Nia began, zipping her own coffee, "what brings you to this neighborhood? I haven't seen you around before the other day on the bus." Ethan hesitated just for a moment. "I moved here about 6 months ago. Needed a change of pace." "From where?" "Uptown," Ethan said vaguely. "It got a little stuffy," Nia nodded. "I get that. I've lived with my aunt in the same apartment since I was 16. Sometimes I dream about just going somewhere new. Starting fresh." She looked down at her coffee, embarrassed by her admission. "Why don't you?" Ethan asked gently. Nia gave a short laugh. "Money for one thing. Dreams don't pay rent. What are your dreams?" Ethan asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. Nia considered the question. "Stability, I guess. Not having to count coins for bus fare." She blushed, remembering their first meeting. "Maybe my own little bookstore someday. Nothing fancy, just mine." She shook her head. "What about you?" "What do you do?" Another slight hesitation. "I'm between things right now. Taking some time to figure out what I actually want versus what I'm expected to do. Family expectations? Something like that." Nia studied him. There was more to his story she could tell, but she didn't push. Everyone had things they kept to themselves. "My aunt raised me after my mum died," Nia offered instead. "She put her whole life on hold to take care of me. Never married, never complained." "She sounds amazing," Ethan said. "She is," Nia agreed with a soft smile. "Tough but fair. She taught me to stand on my own 2 feet no matter what." "Good lesson," Ethan said, a strange expression crossing his face. "What about your family?" Nia asked. "Just my brother Jake and me now," Ethan said. "Parents died a few years ago." "I'm sorry," Nia said quietly. "Thank you." Ethan sipped his coffee. Jake tried to step in as a parent, which was complicated. He means well. They talked until Nia's break was over, sharing small stories that revealed little pieces of themselves. Nia found herself drawn to his quiet intelligence and the way he really listened when she spoke, as if her words mattered. When her break ended, Ethan stayed at the cafe, ordering another coffee and working on his laptop until her shift ended. "Can I walk you home?" he asked as she untied her apron. Nia hesitated. She barely knew him, but something told her she could trust him. "Sure." They walked slowly, stretching out their time together. The evening was cooling down, and Nia wrapped her light jacket tighter around herself. "Cold?" Ethan asked. "A little," she admitted. He moved closer, not quite touching her, but offering his warmth. Nia felt a flutter in her chest at his nearness. As they approached her building, Nia pointed to the small balcony on the 3rd floor. "That's us. Me and Aunt Marla." Ethan looked up at the balcony where he had seen her that night. "Nice spot." "It's home," Nia said simply. They paused at the front steps, both reluctant to say goodbye. "Thank you for walking me," Nia said. "My pleasure," Ethan replied. A figure appeared at the building's entrance, an older woman with the same warm brown skin as Nia, her hair styled in short silver locks. She eyed Ethan with undisguised suspicion. Aunt Marla, Nia said, trying to sound casual. This is Ethan. Ethan, my Aunt Marla. Nice to meet you, ma'am, Ethan said politely, extending his hand. Marla shook it briefly, her expression guarded. You new around here. Haven't seen you before. Yes, ma'am. Moved here a few months ago. Marla looked him up and down, making no attempt to hide her assessment. Nia, dinner's getting cold, she said finally. I'll be right up, Nia promised. Just saying goodbye. Marla gave Ethan one last appraising look before disappearing inside. Sorry about that, Nia said once her aunt was gone. She's protective. No need to apologize, Ethan said with a small smile. I'd be protective of you too. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Nia felt her cheeks warm. I should go in, she said softly. Can I see you again? Ethan asked. Nia smiled. I work tomorrow. Afternoon shift. I might need coffee tomorrow afternoon, Ethan said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Might you? Nia teased. Definitely. With one last smile, Nia turned and went inside, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Upstairs, Aunt Marla was waiting, arms crossed. Who's the white boy? She asked bluntly as Nia hung up her jacket. His name is Ethan, Nia said, trying to keep her voice neutral. I met him a few days ago. And now he's walking you home. Marla raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Nia sighed. It's not like that. Men who show up too quick, be careful, Marla warned, her voice softening slightly. They usually want something. He's just nice, Auntie, Nia insisted, helping her set the table. All men are nice at first, Marla said. I'm just saying keep your eyes open. Your heart too, but your eyes wider. Nia nodded, not wanting to argue. Aunt Marla had her reasons for being cautious about men. Life had taught her those lessons the hard way. He seems polite enough, Marla conceded as they sat down to eat. But new in town, no family around. Just be smart, baby. I will, Nia promised, though inside she felt a spark of defiance. For once she wanted to follow her heart without second-guessing everything. That night, Nia lay in bed thinking about Ethan, his gentle manner, his thoughtful questions, the way his eyes lit up when he smiled. There was something so genuine about him, so different from the few men she'd dated before. She fell asleep wondering what it would be like to really know him. The next afternoon, the cafe was unusually busy. Nia rushed between tables, taking orders, bringing food, cleaning up. She kept glancing at the door, looking for Ethan. When he finally arrived, her heart did a little skip. He caught her eye and smiled, waiting patiently in line. By the time he reached the counter, Nia was flustered and behind on orders. Hey, she said, pushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Sorry, we're slammed today. No problem, Ethan said easily. Take your time. He ordered his usual coffee and found a small table in the corner. Nia brought his drink when she could, apologizing again for the wait. Really, it's fine, Ethan assured her. I'm not in any hurry. Nia smiled gratefully and hurried back to work. From his corner, Ethan watched her move efficiently despite the chaos, always with a kind word for each customer. She was beautiful in motion, confident, graceful, strong. An hour later, the rush finally eased. Nia approached Ethan's table, exhausted but smiling. Sorry about that, she said, collapsing into the chair across from him. Don't apologize, Ethan said. It was impressive to watch you handle everything. Nia laughed. If by handle you mean barely survive, then sure. I mean it, Ethan insisted. You're good at what you do. It's just a job, Nia said with a shrug, but she was pleased by his praise. How much longer is your shift? Ethan asked. Nia checked her watch. Another hour. But I still have to pick up groceries before heading home. I could help, Ethan offered casually. With the groceries, I mean. Oh, Nia said, surprised. You don't have to do that. I know, Ethan said with a smile. I'd like to, though. Nia hesitated. It would be nice to have help, and more time with him. Okay, thanks. The cafe's owner, Rosie, called from behind the counter. Nia, can you handle the register? I need to check on a delivery. Coming. Nia stood quickly. I'll meet you here when my shift ends. Ethan nodded, watching her hurry back to work. While Nia was busy at the register, Ethan quietly approached Rosie when she returned. After a brief, hushed conversation, he handed her some cash, glancing to make sure Nia didn't notice. An hour later, when Nia tried to pay for her coffee and sandwich lunch that had been on her employee tab, Rosie waved her off. It's covered, Rosie said casually. What do you mean? Nia asked, confused. Someone took care of it, Rosie replied, busying herself with the coffee machine. Don't worry about it. Nia looked around and saw Ethan waiting by the door, his expression carefully neutral. Realization dawned. Did you pay for my lunch? She asked him as they left the cafe. Ethan looked slightly guilty. It was no big deal. Ethan, Nia said, stopping on the sidewalk. You can't just do that. Why not? He asked, genuinely confused. You paid for my bus fare. That was different. How? Nia struggled to explain. It just was. It was a one-time thing when you were stuck, and I wanted to return the favor, Ethan said simply. Nia sighed, conflicted. His generosity was sweet, but it also made her uncomfortable. She didn't want him to think she needed charity. Look, I appreciate it, she said carefully, but I can pay my own way. Ethan studied her face, seeming to understand something important about her. I know you can. That's not why I did it. He paused. I'm sorry if I overstepped. The sincerity in his voice melted her irritation. It's okay, just ask next time. I'm not good at letting people do things for me. Noted, Ethan said with a small smile. Now about those groceries. They walked to the small market near Nia's apartment. As they shopped, Ethan made her laugh with silly jokes about the produce. He carried the heavier bags without comment, seeming to understand that offering help without making a big deal about it was the right approach with Nia. Outside her building, they paused again. Thank you, Nia said, taking the bags from him. For helping. Any time, Ethan replied. Their hands brushed as he passed her the last bag, and neither pulled away immediately. Would you? Nia began, then hesitated. Would you want to go for a walk sometime? Not just from work or the store, but on purpose? Ethan's face lit up. I'd like that a lot. Tomorrow evening? There's a nice path along the river. Perfect, Ethan said. I'll meet you here at 7. Nia nodded, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. 7 it is. The next evening they walked along the riverfront as the sun began its descent, painting the water with streaks of orange and gold. The air was cool but comfortable, filled with the sounds of water lapping against the shore and distant city noises. It's beautiful here, Ethan said, looking out at the water. I come here to think sometimes, Nia admitted, when the apartment feels too small or life gets too loud. They found a bench facing the water and sat down closer than they had before, their shoulders almost touching. What do you think about? Ethan asked softly. Nia took a deep breath. The future, mostly. What I want versus what's possible. And what do you want? Security, Nia said without hesitation. Not having to worry about money all the time. Being able to help Aunt Marla retire someday. She paused. But also keen freedom to make my own choices, stand on my own feet. Those don't have to be contradictory, Ethan said. Maybe not for some people, Nia replied. But in my experience, security often comes with strings attached. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I understand that better than you might think. Nia turned to look at him. What do you mean? Ethan seemed to struggle with his words. Just, sometimes the things that should make life easier actually make it more complicated. Something in his tone made Nia curious, but again she didn't push. Everyone had their secrets, their private battles. She respected his right to share in his own time, just as she kept parts of herself guarded. What about you? She asked instead. What do you want for your future? Something real, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Someone who sees me, not what I can give them or do for them. Just me. The vulnerability in his voice touched something deep inside Nia. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand. His fingers curled around hers, warm and strong. They sat like that, hand in hand, watching the sun disappear below the horizon, comfortable in the growing silence between them. In that moment, Nia felt a connection to Ethan that went beyond their brief acquaintance, as if some part of her had recognized some part of him, like finding something she hadn't known she was missing. Later that night, Ethan returned to his apartment. The contrast between the simple, sparsely furnished rooms and the luxury he'd grown up with still struck him sometimes. But tonight it didn't feel like a sacrifice or an experiment. It felt like a choice he was glad he'd made. He opened his laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Family. Photos filled the screen. Ethan in tailored suits at charity galas, standing next to his brother in front of the Walker Enterprises skyscraper, shaking hands with politicians and celebrities, a life that felt increasingly distant from the man who had walked along the river with Nia tonight. He looked at a recent bank statement with its 7-figure balance and thought of Nia counting coins for bus fare, working hard for every dollar. She can't know yet, he whispered to the empty room. Not until she knew him, the real him beyond the Walker name and fortune. Not until he was sure her feelings for him had nothing to do with what he could give her. Because something told him Nia Brooks was different. And he couldn't bear to be wrong about that. Nia and Ethan fell into an easy rhythm over the next few weeks. He'd stop by the cafe several times a week, sometimes working quietly on his laptop in the corner, other times chatting with her on her breaks. They took walks in the evening, discovering shared interests in old movies, mystery novels and spicy food. With each meeting, Nia found herself opening up more, sharing stories about her childhood, her dreams for the future, and even her fears. Ethan listened with such genuine interest that it made her feel like her ordinary life was somehow special. But there were still moments when she sensed he was holding something back. One rainy afternoon, Ethan came into the cafe wearing a light jacket, his hair damp from the downpour outside. As he reached to accept the coffee Nia handed him, his sleeve pulled back, revealing a watch on his wrist that caught the light. Nia's eyes widened slightly. She didn't know much about watches, but she recognized quality when she saw it. The sleek silver timepiece with its blue face looked expensive, very expensive. "Nice watch," she said casually, trying to keep the surprise from her voice. Ethan quickly tugged his sleeve down, a flicker of something like panic crossing his face before he laughed it off. "Oh, thanks. It was a gift." "Some gift," Nia said, raising an eyebrow. "My brother," Ethan explained with a shrug. "He's big on watches. Got it for my birthday last year." Nia nodded, but something about his quick explanation felt off. The watch looked like it cost more than she made in several months, maybe even a year. It didn't fit with the rest of Ethan. His simple clothes, his modest apartment that he'd described, his casual mention of being between jobs. She let it go, focusing instead on a new customer who had just walked in. But the image of that watch stayed with her, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Later that evening, Nia sat on her bed, phone in hand, as she filled Tasha in on the latest developments. "So you're telling me this guy has no job, lives in a basic apartment, but wears a watch worth thousands of dollars?" Tasha asked, her voice skeptical. "Maybe it's not real," Nia suggested, though she didn't quite believe it. The watch had looked authentic. "Or maybe there's something he's not telling you," Tasha said. "If he's lying about little things, what else could he be hiding?" "You're being dramatic," Nia said, but Tasha's words echoed her own nagging doubts. "I'm being cautious," Tasha countered. "Look, I'm glad you're happy. He seems to make you smile more than I've seen in ages. Just keep your eyes open, okay?" "I will," Nia promised, though her heart was already arguing with her head. After hanging up, Nia stared at the ceiling, thinking about Ethan. There was something so genuine about the way he looked at her, the way he listened. Could someone fake that kind of connection? She didn't think so. But the watch bothered her, not because of what it was, but because it hinted at a side of Ethan he wasn't sharing with her. Why would he hide something like that? She whispered to the empty room. The next day, Ethan met his brother Jake for lunch at a small diner, far from both his apartment and Walker Enterprises headquarters. They sat in a corner booth, Jake looking out of place in his tailored suit while Ethan blended in with his casual clothes. "The board is asking questions," Jake said without preamble. "They expect you back soon. This sabbatical of yours has gone on long enough." Ethan sipped his water. "I told you I'm figuring things out. For 6 months. Jake leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Look, I covered for you when you wanted to live simply for a while. Experience how the other half lives or whatever. But you have responsibilities, Ethan. To the company, to our employees, to our parents' legacy." "I know that," Ethan said, a hint of irritation in his voice. "And I will come back." "Just not yet." Jake studied his brother's face. "This is about that girl, isn't it? The one from the bus." Ethan didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Have you told her who you really are?" Jake asked. "Not exactly. What does that mean?" Ethan sighed. "She knows my name is Ethan Walker. She just doesn't know about," he gestured vaguely, "that you're worth 9 figures. Jake finished bluntly. That you own half of Walker Enterprises? That the simple apartment you're playing house in costs more than most people make in a year? It's not like that, Ethan insisted. I'm not playing at anything. I just want her to know me, the real me, before she knows about the money. Jake shook his head. Stop hiding who you are. She'll find out eventually, and then what? You think she'll be happy you lied to her? I haven't lied, Ethan protested. I've just omitted certain details. That's the same thing, and you know it, Jake said, his voice softening slightly. Look, I get it. You want someone who wants you for you. But starting a relationship with secrets this big? It never ends well, little brother. I'll tell her, Ethan promised. When the time is right. Jake looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he sighed and changed the subject. The Thompson deal needs your signature. I brought the papers. As they discussed business, Ethan's mind kept drifting to Naya. Jake was right. He needed to tell her the truth. Soon. But every time he thought about it, he pictured her face changing, her warm eyes growing distant or worse, lighting up with interest in what his wealth could do for her. He'd seen it happen before, people's attitudes shifting once they knew about the Walker fortune. He couldn't bear to see that happen with Naya. As they left the diner, Jake put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Stop hiding who you are, he repeated. She'll find out anyway. Before Ethan could respond, he spotted a familiar face approaching on the sidewalk. Nia was walking toward them, her eyes widening in surprise when she saw him. Ethan, she said, glancing curiously between the brothers. Nia, Ethan said, recovering quickly. What are you doing here? Picking up lunch for Rosie and me, she replied, holding up a paper bag. Her eyes moved to Jake, taking in his expensive suit and the obvious family resemblance. This is my brother, Jake, Ethan said, feeling suddenly nervous. Jake, this is Nia. Nice to meet you, Jake said, shaking her hand with a smile that was just a little too knowing for Ethan's comfort. I've heard a lot about you. Really? Nia looked at Ethan, who shifted uncomfortably. All good things, Jake assured her. My brother seems quite taken with you. Jake, Ethan warned quietly. Nia looked between them, sensing tension. I should get back to work. The food's getting cold. Of course, Ethan said quickly. I'll call you later. Nia nodded, giving Jake a polite smile before continuing on her way. She glanced back once to see the brothers in what appeared to be a heated conversation. Jake gesturing emphatically while Ethan shook his head. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but the last snippet reached her as she turned the corner. Going to find out, and then what? Jake's voice carried on the breeze. Find out what? Nia wondered, her earlier suspicions resurfacing. What was Ethan hiding? Determined to push her doubts aside, Nia threw herself into enjoying her next date with Ethan. He had suggested they spend Saturday exploring the city, and the day turned out to be perfect. Warm sunshine, clear blue skies, and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of street food and autumn leaves. Ethan met her outside her apartment building, dressed simply in jeans and a blue button-down shirt that brought out the color of his eyes. The smile that lit his face when he saw her made Nia's heart skip a beat. You look beautiful, he said, taking in her yellow sundress and denim jacket. Thanks, Nia replied, feeling a flush of pleasure at the admiration in his eyes. Where are we headed first? I thought we'd just wander, Ethan said. See where the day takes us. And wander they did. They explored a farmer's market, where Ethan bought her a small bouquet of sunflowers. They sampled food from different vendors, laughing as they tried to eat messy tacos without dripping sauce on their clothes. They listened to a jazz band playing in the park, Ethan's hand finding Nia's as the music swirled around them. It was during a quiet moment on a bench overlooking the river that Nia decided to ask about Jake. Your brother seems intense, she said carefully. Ethan chuckled. That's one way to put it. Jake takes everything seriously, especially family. You two seemed to be arguing after I left, Nia ventured. A shadow crossed Ethan's face. Just brother stuff. He thinks I should be focusing more on work, less on... He trailed off, looking at her with a softness that made her breath catch. Less on what? Nia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Less on following my heart, Ethan replied, his eyes holding hers. The world seemed to slow down as he leaned toward her, his hand gently cupping her cheek. Nia closed her eyes as his lips met hers in a soft, sweet kiss that sent warmth spreading through her entire body. When they pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for a while now," he admitted. "What took you so long?" Nia teased, her heart racing. Ethan smiled, but there was a flicker of something like guilt in his eyes. Before Nia could question it, he stood and pulled her to her feet. "Come on. There's a street festival a few blocks from here. I heard the food is amazing." Hand in hand, they continued their adventure, the kiss having shifted something between them. There was a new awareness, a current of electricity that ran between them whenever their eyes met or their hands touched. As the sun began to set, they found themselves at a small outdoor concert, fairy lights strung overhead casting a magical glow. Ethan stood behind Nia, his arms wrapped around her waist as they swayed to the music. Nia leaned back against his chest, feeling safer and happier than she had in a long time. Under the twinkling lights, with the music playing and Ethan's arms around her, all her doubts seemed small and distant. This felt real. He felt real. When he kissed her again as they walked back toward her apartment, stopping under a streetlight like a scene from an old movie, Nia let herself fall a little deeper. The next morning, Aunt Marla cornered Nia in the kitchen as she made coffee, still floating from the previous day's magic. "You came home late last night," Marla observed, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. "I was with Ethan," Nia said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "We spent the day together." Marla studied her niece carefully. "You're falling for him." It wasn't a question, but Nia nodded anyway. "He's special, Auntie. Different from anyone I've dated before." "That's what worries me," Marla said, sitting down at the small kitchen table. "You barely know this man, Nia. He shows up out of nowhere, no family nearby that you've met, vague about his work." "I met his brother," Nia countered. "Once, by accident," Marla pointed out. "Has he introduced you properly to any of his people? Taken you to his home?" Nia frowned. She hadn't been to Ethan's apartment yet, she realized. Whenever she suggested it, he always had a reason why they should meet somewhere else. "He's just private," Nia said, but the words sounded weak even to her own ears. Marla reached across the table and took Nia's hand. "Baby, I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I see how happy he makes you. That smile hasn't left your face in weeks." She squeezed Nia's fingers gently. "I just don't want to see you hurt. Protect your heart, that's all I'm saying." Nia nodded, conflicted. Part of her wanted to defend Ethan, to insist that Marla's suspicions were unfounded, but another part, the practical, cautious part that her aunt had helped nurture, acknowledged that there were questions about Ethan that remained unanswered. "I'll be careful," Nia promised. "But I think he's worth taking a chance on." Marla sighed. "Just promise me one thing. If something feels wrong, don't ignore it. Trust your instincts. They've never led you astray before." "I promise," Nia said, squeezing her aunt's hand in return. Later that evening, Ethan called to invite her to dinner at an Italian restaurant downtown. The place was nicer than their usual haunts. Cloth napkins, candles on the tables, a wine list that made Nia slightly nervous about the prices. "Is this a special occasion?" she asked as they were seated. "Does being with you count?" Ethan replied with a smile that made her heart flutter. As they enjoyed their meal, Ethan seemed distracted, as if he had something on his mind. Several times he started to say something, then changed course. "Everything okay?" Nia finally asked as their dessert arrived. Ethan took a deep breath. "Nia, there's something I've been wanting to tell you. About me, about my life." Nia felt a flutter of anxiety. "What is it?" Ethan hesitated, looking into her eyes. "I'm not exactly who you might think I am. What does that mean?" Nia asked, her pulse quickening. Before Ethan could answer, the waiter approached with more water. When he left, Nia leaned forward expectantly, but Ethan's expression had changed. "You know what?" he said with a forced smile. "It's not important right now. Tell me more about that book you were reading." Nia frowned, disappointed and confused, but she didn't push. Whatever he had been about to say, he clearly wasn't ready to share it yet. As they left the restaurant, Nia couldn't help but notice that Ethan paid the considerable bill without even glancing at the total. Another small piece that didn't fit with the picture he had painted of himself. A few days later, Nia decided to surprise Ethan by bringing him coffee at his apartment. He had mentioned feeling under the weather, and she thought a small gesture might cheer him up. She hadn't been to his place yet, but she knew the address from the time he'd mentioned it in passing. It wasn't far from her own neighborhood, just a few bus stops away in an area that was neither fancy nor run down. Exactly what she would have expected. What she didn't expect was the sleek black luxury car parked in the small lot, adjacent to his building. As she approached, she saw Ethan emerge from the driver's side, clicking a key fob to lock it. The car beeped and its lights flashed. Nia stopped in her tracks, confusion washing over her. That was definitely Ethan, and that was definitely his car. A car that probably cost more than she would make in 5 years. She was about to call out to him when he turned and saw her. The look on his face, surprise followed by something like guilt, made her stomach drop. "Nia," he said, quickly recovering, "what are you doing here?" She held up the coffee cup, feeling suddenly foolish. "I thought you might like some coffee since you weren't feeling well. But you seem fine." Ethan glanced at the car, then back at her. "I am, actually. Feeling better, I mean." An awkward silence fell between them. Nia's eyes kept drifting to the car. "Nice car," she said finally, unable to keep the question from her voice. "It's not mine," Ethan said quickly. "It's Jake's. He's letting me borrow it to run some errands." "Oh," Nia said, not entirely convinced. "That's nice of him." "Yeah, he can be decent sometimes," Ethan said with a nervous laugh. "Thanks for the coffee." "Want to come up?" Nia hesitated, then shook her head. "Actually, I should get back. I promised Aunt Marla I'd help her with something." It was a lie, and from the look on Ethan's face, he knew it. But he didn't call her on it. "Another time, then," he said, his voice tinged with disappointment. "Another time," Nia agreed, handing him the coffee and turning to leave. As she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her back. The questions she'd been pushing aside were getting harder to ignore. The expensive watch, the tension with his brother, the way he avoided talking about his work or his past, and now this car. Who was Ethan Walker, really? Despite her growing doubts, Nia couldn't deny her feelings for Ethan. When he texted the next day asking if she wanted to meet at the park on Sunday afternoon, she agreed. The day was perfect. Crisp autumn air, trees ablaze with red and gold leaves, children playing on the grass, while their parents watched from nearby benches. Ethan was waiting for her near the entrance, a nervous smile on his face. "I thought we could have a picnic," he said, holding up a basket. "There's a spot by the pond that's perfect." They spread a blanket under a large oak tree and unpacked the food, crusty bread, gourmet cheeses, fresh fruit, and chocolates that melted on Nia's tongue. As they ate, the tension between them gradually eased. They talked about their childhoods, Nia growing up with her aunt after her mother's death, Ethan and his brother navigating life after losing their parents. "What were they like?" Nia asked. "Your parents?" Ethan's face softened with memory. "My dad was intense, driven. Expected a lot from Jake and me, but he was fair. My mom was the heart of our family. Warm, generous, always putting others first." His voice grew wistful. "She would have loved you." The simple statement touched Nia deeply. "I wish I could have met her." "Me too," Ethan said quietly. After a moment, he reached into the basket and pulled out a small toy boat. "Want to sail this on the pond?" It was my favorite thing to do as a kid. They spent the next hour like children, laughing as they raced the little boat across the water, taking turns adjusting its sail to catch the breeze. When Ethan slipped and nearly fell in, Nia caught his arm, both of them dissolving into giggles. As the sun began to set, they packed up their picnic and walked hand in hand through the park. Everything felt perfect. The golden light filtering through the trees, the crisp air carrying the scent of fallen leaves, Ethan's warm hand wrapped around hers. They stopped near a fountain where an old man was playing violin, the sweet melody drifting through the evening air. Without a word, Ethan pulled Nia close and began to sway with her, dancing slowly as if they were the only two people in the world. "This has been the best day," Nia whispered. Looking up at him, Ethan's eyes were full of emotion as he gazed down at her. "Being with you makes every day the best day," he said softly. When he kissed her, it felt different from their previous kisses, deeper, more certain, filled with a promise that neither of them put into words. Nia felt herself falling completely, any lingering doubts momentarily silenced by the overwhelming feeling of rightness that enveloped her. As they walked back toward her apartment, Nia couldn't remember ever feeling this happy, this complete. Whatever questions she had about Ethan's life, she trusted that he would share everything when he was ready. What mattered was how he made her feel, seen, valued, cherished. That night, as Nia got ready for bed, her phone pinged with a text from Tasha. How's it going with Mystery Man? Nia smiled as she replied, "Perfect. I think I'm falling in love." She set her phone down, the admission making her heart race. It was true. She was falling in love with Ethan Walker, and it both thrilled and terrified her. The next evening, Nia was sorting through bills at her small desk when curiosity got the better of her. She opened her laptop and typed Ethan Walker into the search bar. Not really expecting to find anything significant, the results made her heart stop. The first link was to Walker Enterprises, one of the largest technology companies in the country. The second was a news article with the headline, "Ethan Walker, heir to Walker fortune donates millions to education fund." With trembling fingers, Nia clicked on the article. There he was, her Ethan in an expensive suit, smiling for the camera as he shook hands with the mayor. The article described him as the younger son of the late William and Eleanor Walker, who now serves as co-CEO of Walker Enterprises alongside his brother Jake. Nia felt like she couldn't breathe. She clicked on more links, each one revealing another piece of the truth. Ethan Walker wasn't just wealthy. He was one of the richest men in the city, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he had lied to her. For weeks he had pretended to be an ordinary guy between jobs, living in a modest apartment, when in reality he was the co-head of a massive corporation, with more money than she could even comprehend. The expensive watch, the fancy car, the way he never worried about prices. It all made horrible sense now. Even his reluctance to bring her to his apartment, probably not even his real home. Hot tears slid down Nia's cheeks as the full weight of the deception hit her. Every moment between them suddenly felt tainted, called into question. Had any of it been real, or was she just some experiment for him, a way to see how the other half lived? She slammed her laptop shut, her hands shaking with a mixture of hurt and anger. The pain in her chest was physical, like someone had reached in and squeezed her heart. "He lied to me," she whispered to the empty room, the words catching on a sob. "All this time he lied to me." The next morning, Nia arrived at work early, her eyes puffy from a night of little sleep. She moved mechanically through her opening routine, brewing coffee, setting up the pastry case, wiping down tables. Her mind kept replaying every moment with Ethan, searching for clues she should have seen. "You look like you lost your best friend," Rosie said, coming in from the back. She studied Nia's face with concern. "Or worse." "I'm fine," Nia said automatically, then sighed. "Actually, no, I'm not." Before she could elaborate, the bell above the door jingled. Nia looked up, her heart clenching when she saw Ethan standing there. He wore his usual casual clothes, jeans and a simple shirt, but now she saw them for what they were, an expensive costume to play the part of an ordinary man. "Hey," he said, his eyes hopeful. "Got a minute?" Rosie glanced between them, sensing tension. "I'll check on those deliveries," she said tactfully, disappearing into the back. Nia crossed her arms, staying behind the counter like it was a shield. "What do you want, Ethan? Or should I call you Mr. Walker, co-CEO of Walker Enterprises?" The color drained from his face. "Nia, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been lying to me for weeks." Her voice trembled with hurt and anger. "Making me think you were just a regular guy struggling to find your way." "I never lied about who I am," Ethan said, stepping closer. "Just about my circumstances." Nia gave a bitter laugh. "Your circumstances? You're one of the richest men in the city. You run a huge company. That's not a small detail you forgot to mention. I wanted you to know me first," Ethan pleaded. "The real me, not the money. The real you." Nia's eyes flashed. "The real you has been hiding behind fake humility this whole time. Was any of it true? Or was I just some kind of social experiment for you? See how the other half lives?" Pain crossed Ethan's face. "It wasn't like that, Nia. Everything between us was real. Is real." A customer walked in, then quickly backed out, sensing the tension. "I have to work," Nia said, her voice cold despite the fire in her chest. "Some of us actually need our jobs. Please, just let me explain." "After your shift—" "No," Nia cut him off. "I don't want your explanations. I don't want anything from you." "Nia, just go, Ethan." Her voice cracked on his name. "Please, just go." For a moment he looked like he might argue further. Instead, he nodded once, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for hurting you. That's the last thing I ever wanted to do." As he turned to leave, Nia felt a crack in her resolve. Part of her wanted to call him back, to hear him out. But the pain of his deception was too fresh, too raw. She watched him walk away, a hollow feeling spreading through her chest where warmth had lived before. The next few days passed in a blur of work and sleepless nights. Ethan called and texted repeatedly, but Nia ignored every attempt. He even sent flowers to the cafe, beautiful arrangements that she gave away to customers, unable to look at them without feeling the sting of betrayal. At home, she buried herself in chores and errands, anything to keep busy, to avoid thinking. But in the quiet moments, when there was nothing left to clean or organize, the pain would wash over her again. It wasn't just that he had money. It was that he hadn't trusted her enough to be honest. Had he really thought so little of her? Did he believe she was so shallow that she would only want him for his wealth? On the third night after their confrontation, Aunt Marla found Nia sitting on the balcony, staring blankly at the city lights. "You can't hide out here forever," Marla said gently, settling into the chair beside her. "I'm not hiding," Nia protested weakly. Marla hummed, unconvinced. "I want to tell me what happened with your young man." The words came pouring out. Ethan's secret identity, his lies of omission, the discovery that had shattered her trust. As she talked, fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Marla listened without interruption, her face thoughtful. When Nia finally fell silent, she reached over and took her niece's hand. "So he's rich," Marla said simply. "And he didn't tell you? He lied to me, Auntie, did he? Or did he just want you to see him, not his bank account?" Marla's voice was gentle but firm. "I've been warning you about this man for weeks, but now I'm wondering if maybe I was wrong." Nia looked up in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Think about it, baby. Most wealthy men flaunt what they have. The cars, the clothes, the connections. They use it to impress, to get what they want." Marla squeezed her hand. "This boy hid all that to be with you, just you. No advantage, no power play." "But he should have trusted me with the truth," Nia insisted. "Yes, he should have," Marla agreed. "And that's something you two need to work out. But don't close your heart because you're hurt. Ask yourself, what was his intention?" Nia stared out at the city lights, considering her aunt's words. She remembered how carefully Ethan had listened to her dreams, how he'd never made her feel small or pitied, how he'd looked at her like she was precious, not because of what she could give him, but simply because she was herself. "I don't know if I can trust him again," Nia whispered. "Trust is earned back slowly," Marla said wisely. "But first you have to decide if he deserves the chance." Later that night, Nia finally looked at Ethan's messages. The latest one was simple. "I understand if you never want to see me again, but please know that every moment with you was real. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the whole truth sooner. You deserved better." She sat with her phone in her hands for a long time, heart and mind at war. Finally, she set it down without responding and crawled into bed, exhaustion pulling her into a troubled sleep. Across town in his real penthouse apartment, Ethan sat with Jake, nursing a glass of whiskey as rain pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The luxurious space felt empty, meaningless without Nia's laughter to fill it. "You look like hell," Jake observed, loosening his tie as he sat across from his brother. "Thanks," Ethan muttered, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "She still won't talk to you." Ethan shook his head. "Can't say I blame her," Jake sighed. "I warned you this would happen." "Not helpful, Jake, sorry." Jake leaned forward, his expression softening. "Look, I know I've been hard on you about this whole experiment of yours, but I've never seen you like this over a woman before." "She's not just any woman," Ethan said quietly. "She's everything." "Then fight for her," Jake said simply. "Tell her everything. No more secrets, no more half-truths. Show her who you really are, all of you. What if that's not enough?" Ethan's voice was barely audible. "What if she only sees the money now? From what you've told me about her, that's not who she is." Jake stood and placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "But you'll never know if you don't try." After Jake left, Ethan walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there was Nia, the woman who had paid a stranger's bus fare without hesitation, who worked hard for everything she had, who dreamed of stability but feared losing her. Independence. The woman he had fallen in love with. The realization wasn't surprising. He'd known for weeks that what he felt for Nia went beyond simple attraction or affection. What surprised him was the clarity it brought. He loved her, and he would do whatever it took to earn back her trust, even if that meant stripping away every advantage his wealth and position had ever given him. He picked up his phone and made a call. "I need to do something," he told his assistant. "And I need your help." A week after their confrontation at the cafe, Nia came home from work to find Ethan waiting outside her building. He looked different, his hair slightly unkempt, his clothes simpler than usual. No watch on his wrist, no phone in his hand. Just Ethan standing in the light rain without an umbrella. "What are you doing here?" she asked, stopping several feet away from him. "I needed to see you," he said simply. "To tell you the truth." "All of it?" "I already know the truth," Nia said, trying to hold on to her anger despite the way her heart leaped at the sight of him. "I found it on Google." "You found facts," Ethan corrected gently. "Not truth." A heavier rain began to fall, droplets clinging to his eyelashes and dampening his shirt. He made no move to seek shelter. "You're getting soaked," Nia pointed out, a reluctant concern creeping into her voice. "I don't care," Ethan said, and she believed him. "I didn't come here in my car. I didn't bring my wallet. I have no phone, no watch, nothing that money can buy." He took a step toward her. "I came with just myself, the man who fell in love with the woman on that bus, not for what she could give me, but for who she is." The word love hung in the air between them, making Nia's breath catch. Despite herself, she moved closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his eyes. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked, her voice softer now. "Did you think I would only want you for your money?" "Not at first," Ethan admitted. "At first it was just refreshing to be seen as just a person, not a walker. But then as I fell for you, I got scared. I've never met anyone like you, Nia. Anyone so genuine, so strong, so real." He ran a hand through his wet hair. "I was afraid that once you knew, everything would change." "You didn't trust me," Nia said, the hurt still evident in her voice. "I didn't trust anyone," Ethan corrected. "It wasn't about you. It was my fear, my past experiences. People have always wanted something from me. Access, influence, security. But you," his voice grew tender, "you gave a stranger bus fare when you barely had enough for yourself. You never asked me for anything. You were just you." The rain fell harder now, soaking them both. Nia knew she should invite him inside, but something held her back, a final wall of protection around her heart. "I need time, Ethan," she said finally. "This is a lot to process." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know. Take all the time you need. I'll be here." He started to turn away, then paused. "Just know that the man you got to know, the one who sailed toy boats with you in the park and danced with you by the fountain, that's the real me. The money, the company, they're just circumstances, like you said. They're not who I am." As he walked away into the rain, Nia felt the last of her anger dissolve, replaced by a confusing mixture of hurt, longing, and something like hope. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Aunt Marla watching from the doorway until her aunt spoke. "That boy just stood in the rain for 45 minutes waiting for you," Marla said quietly. "I watched him from the window. Didn't pace, didn't check the time, just stood there determined to see you." "He lied to me," Nia reminded her, but the words lacked conviction now. Marla's eyes were kind but challenging. "Did he lie about the things that matter? About how he feels about you? About who he is inside?" The questions followed Nia as she went inside, her clothes dripping on the hallway floor. They echoed in her mind as she changed into dry clothes and wrapped herself in a blanket on the couch. Had Ethan lied about the things that truly mattered? Or had he simply been afraid? Afraid of being wanted for the wrong reasons, afraid of losing something precious before it had fully begun. As night fell, Nia made a decision. She would meet with him, hear him out completely. She would listen with an open heart but cautious eyes. The spark between them was too rare, too special to dismiss, without giving him a chance to explain fully. She picked up her phone and sent a simple text. "Meet me at the park tomorrow. 2 p.m., where we kissed by the fountain." His reply came immediately. "I'll be there." "Thank you, Nia." Sleep came easier that night, though her dreams were filled with rain and whispered words of love. The next day dawned bright and clear, as if the rain had washed away more than just dust from the city streets. Nia spent the morning in a state of nervous anticipation, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on a simple blue dress that Ethan had once complimented. At 1:45, she arrived at the park, her heart beating faster as she approached their meeting spot. Ethan was already there, sitting on the edge of the fountain, watching the water dance in the sunlight. He wore jeans and a grey Henley, simple clothes that she now understood were probably far more expensive than they appeared. He stood when he saw her, his face lighting up despite the uncertainty in his eyes. "You came." "I said I would," Nia replied, stopping a few feet away from him. "Can we sit?" Ethan gestured to a nearby bench. Nia nodded, and they settled onto the bench, a careful distance between them. For a moment, neither spoke, the burble of the fountain filling the silence. "I owe you the whole truth," Ethan finally said. "No more half-answers or omissions." "I'm listening," Nia said quietly. Ethan took a deep breath. "My full name is Ethan William Walker. My family owns Walker Enterprises. My father built it from nothing, and now Jake and I run it together. After my parents died 3 years ago, I took over as co-CEO, but I was—" he searched for the right word. "Lost, surrounded by people who wanted things from me, never seeing me for myself." He glanced at her, then continued. 6 months ago, I decided to try something different. I kept my position at the company, but I moved into a regular apartment, lived on a budget, tried to experience life without the safety net of wealth. It wasn't a game or an experiment. It was me trying to find myself again, to remember who I was beyond the money. "And then you met me," Nia said softly. A smile touched his lips. "And then I met you. This amazing woman who helped a stranger without hesitation, who worked hard for everything she had, who dreamed of security but never compromised her independence." His eyes met hers. "I was drawn to you from the first moment, but I was afraid to tell you who I really was. I've had experiences in the past, people changing once they knew about the money. Did you really think I would be like that?" The question held no accusation now, just a desire to understand. "No," Ethan said immediately. "Not after I got to know you. But by then I'd already started the lie, and I didn't know how to fix it without losing you." He looked down at his hands. "I was a coward, Nia, and I'm so sorry." Nia was quiet for a moment, processing his words. "I understand why you did it," she said finally. "But it hurt to think you didn't trust me." "I do trust you," Ethan said earnestly, turning to face her fully. "More than anyone. That's why I'm here now, with everything laid bare. No more secrets." He hesitated, then added softly, "I love you, Nia Brooks. The money, the company, none of it means anything compared to that." The words hung between them, sincere and vulnerable. Nia felt tears gather in her eyes. "I don't need your money, Ethan," she whispered. "I just needed your truth. You have it now," he promised. "All of it." Nia looked into his eyes, the same kind, thoughtful eyes that had looked at her with wonder when she paid his bus fare all those weeks ago. The man before her was still Ethan, the one who sailed toy boats with her, who listened to her dreams without judgment, who made her feel seen and valued. The wealth was just a circumstance, not the essence of who he was. Slowly, Nia reached out and took his hand. "I need you to promise me something." "Anything," Ethan said without hesitation. "No more lies. No more secrets. Even when the truth is hard or scary, we face it together." "I promise," he said, squeezing her hand. "Complete honesty, always." Nia took a deep breath, ready to make her own confession. "I love you too, Ethan Walker. The real you, not your money, not your position, just you." Joy bloomed across his face, bright and beautiful as sunrise. He pulled her gently into his arms, cradling her face as if she were precious. "Can I kiss you now?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. In answer, Nia leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, pouring all her forgiveness, all her love into the kiss. His arms tightened around her, holding her close as if afraid she might slip away. When they finally parted, both a little breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I'll spend every day proving myself worthy of your trust," he vowed. "Of your love. We'll build that trust together," Nia replied, her fingers laced with his. One truth at a time. They sat by the fountain for hours, talking with new openness. Ethan told her about his real home, a penthouse downtown, and about the pressures of running the company. Nia shared her fears about their different worlds, the challenges they might face. "It won't always be easy," Ethan acknowledged. "But nothing worth having ever is." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the park, they walked hand in hand toward Nia's apartment. "Will you come to dinner tomorrow?" she asked. At my place with Aunt Marla. A proper introduction this time, Ethan smiled. I'd be honored. Be prepared for the third degree, Nia warned with a laugh. She's going to have questions, lots of them. I'll answer every single one, Ethan promised. No more hiding, remember? When they reached her building, Ethan kissed her once more, tender and sweet. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, Nia agreed, her heart full as she watched him walk away, still on foot. Still keeping his promise to come to her as just himself, Nia felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead might have its challenges, but with honesty as their foundation, she believed they could face anything together. Upstairs, Aunt Marla was waiting, a knowing look on her face. So? She asked simply. Nia couldn't hold back her smile. We're going to try again. The right way this time, with everything on the table. Marla nodded, satisfaction in her eyes. Good. That boy loves you, I could see it plain as day. He's coming for dinner tomorrow, Nia warned. And yes, he really is that Ethan Walker. Well, Marla said with a chuckle, I guess I'll need to make my special chicken then. Nia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in days. He's still the same person, Auntie. Just with a bigger bank account than we thought. It's not the size of his bank account I care about, Marla said, suddenly serious. It's the size of his heart. And from what I've seen, that seems plenty big enough for my girl. Nia hugged her aunt tightly, grateful for her wisdom and support. Thank you for telling me to listen. Sometimes the heart sees clearer than the eyes, Marla said, patting her back. You just have to give it a chance to be heard. That night, Nia slept peacefully for the first time in a week, her dreams filled not with worry or doubt, but with hope for the future, a future built on honesty, trust, and a love that saw beyond circumstances to the truth of who they were together. The next evening, Nia fussed around the small apartment, straightening pillows and rearranging flowers that were already perfectly arranged. Aunt Marla watched with amused eyes as she checked the chicken roasting in the oven for the third time in 10 minutes. That bird's not going anywhere, Marla teased. Calm down, child. I want everything to be perfect, Nia said, smoothing her dress, a simple blue one that brought out the warm undertones in her skin. He's not coming for the food or the decor, Marla pointed out. He's coming for you. The doorbell rang and Nia's heart jumped. She took a deep breath, centering herself before opening the door. Ethan stood there in neat slacks and a button-down shirt, looking both handsome and nervous. In one hand he held a bouquet of sunflowers, Nia's favorite, and in the other a small gift bag. Hi, he said, his eyes taking in the sight of her with unmistakable adoration. Hi, Nia replied, stepping back to let him in. You look nice. So do you, he said softly. Beautiful, actually. He handed her the flowers, their bright yellow faces seeming to smile at her. For you. And this, he held out the gift bag, is for Aunt Marla. Marla stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. So you're the famous Ethan Walker, she said, her tone direct but not unfriendly. Yes, ma'am, Ethan replied, extending his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you properly this time. Marla shook his hand, her grip firm. We'll see about that. But there was a twinkle in her eye that took the sting from her words. She accepted the gift bag, peering inside. Her eyebrows rose as she pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box. It's beautiful, she said, genuinely surprised. Open it, Ethan encouraged. Marla lifted the lid, and soft music began to play, a gentle, familiar melody that made her eyes widen. That's What a Wonderful World, she said, looking up at him in wonder. How did you know that was my song? Ethan glanced at Nia with a small smile. Nia mentioned it was the song you and her mother used to sing together. I thought you might like it. Marla's expression softened, her eyes growing misty. She closed the box gently, cradling it in her hands. Thank you, she said simply. But the words carried weight. Nia felt a wave of tenderness as she watched the exchange. Ethan had listened, really listened, when she'd told him about her family, filing away details that mattered. Dinner's almost ready, she said, moving to put the flowers in water. Would you like something to drink, Ethan? Whatever you're having is fine, he replied, following her to the small kitchen, while Marla returned to the stove. The music box placed carefully on a shelf. As Nia arranged the sunflowers in a vase, Ethan stood close behind her, his voice low so only she could hear. I missed you. She turned to face him, their bodies inches apart in the tiny kitchen. I missed you too, she admitted, feeling the truth of the words deep in her chest. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. "Thank you for giving me another chance." "Thank you for being honest," she replied. "Even when it was hard." Marla cleared her throat from the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. "If you two can stop making eyes at each other for a minute, dinner's ready." Nia blushed, but didn't let go of Ethan's hand as they moved to the dining table. Dinner was delicious. Aunt Marla's special roast chicken with herbs, creamy mashed potatoes, and greens cooked with a hint of spice. Ethan complimented the food sincerely, earning an approving nod from Marla. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily than Nia had dared to hope. Marla asked direct questions about Ethan's family, his work, his intentions toward her niece, and Ethan answered each one honestly, without hesitation or deflection. "So you run this big company with your brother," Marla said, serving peach cobbler for dessert. "What exactly does Walker Enterprises do?" "We started as a tech company, software mostly," Ethan explained. "But my father expanded into clean energy and sustainable development about 15 years ago. That's the part of the business I'm most passionate about." "And this playing poor business," Marla said bluntly. "What was that about?" Ethan didn't flinch at her directness. "It wasn't about playing poor, ma'am. It was about finding perspective." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "After my parents died, I felt lost, surrounded by yes-men and opportunists. I needed to remember who I was without the money, the name, the position." Marla studied him thoughtfully. "And did you find yourself?" Ethan's eyes shifted to Nia, his expression softening. "I found something better. Someone who saw me, just me, and liked what she saw." Nia felt warmth spreading through her chest at his words. "And what happens now?" Marla pressed. "You go back to your fancy penthouse, your big office. Where does my niece fit into that world?" "Auntie," Nia protested, embarrassed. "It's a fair question," Ethan said gently. "The truth is, I don't want to go back to living exactly as I was before. That life was empty in many ways." He turned to face Nia fully. "I want to build something new with you, something real." "What about your company?" Nia asked, the question that had been nagging at her finally voiced. "Your responsibilities?" "The company is part of who I am," Ethan acknowledged. "I can't and won't walk away from it completely, but it doesn't have to define me or us." Marla nodded, apparently satisfied with his answers. As the evening continued, she gradually warmed to Ethan, especially when he insisted on helping with the dishes despite her protests. Later, while Marla watched her evening shows, Nia and Ethan slipped out onto the small balcony. The city lights spread out before them like scattered stars. "Your aunt is amazing," Ethan said, leaning against the railing beside her. "Tough but fair, just like you said." Nia smiled. "She likes you. She wouldn't have let you help with the dishes if she didn't." "High praise indeed," Ethan laughed. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled only by the distant sounds of the city. Ethan's hand found hers again, his thumb tracing gentle patterns on her skin. "I want to show you my world," he said finally. "Not to impress you or change you, but because it's part of me. The way this," he gestured to the apartment, the neighborhood, "is part of you." Nia nodded, understanding what he was asking. "I'd like that. Tomorrow?" he asked. "I can pick you up after work." "Tomorrow," she agreed. Ethan's eyes were serious as they met hers. "It won't change anything between us, Nia, I promise." "I know," she said, and found that she truly did believe him. The foundation they were rebuilding was stronger now, reinforced with honesty and trust. When Ethan left that night, his goodbye kiss was sweet with promise. Nia watched from the balcony as he walked to the corner, where a car waited. Not the flashy luxury vehicle she'd seen before, but something more modest. A compromise, she realized. A bridge between his worlds. Back inside, Aunt Marla was waiting, her expression thoughtful. "Well?" Nia asked. "He'll do," Marla said simply, but her eyes were warm. "He sees you, baby. Really sees you." Nia hugged her aunt tightly. "Thank you for giving him a chance. Just be careful with your heart," Marla advised, though her tone was gentler now. "Not because he's rich, but because he's a man in love. That can be dangerous in its own way." "I will," Nia promised. That night, she dreamed of sunflowers and music boxes, of bridges between worlds, and a future built on truth. The next day after her shift, Nia found Ethan waiting outside the cafe, leaning against a sleek but not ostentatious car. He wore clothes she hadn't seen before, well-tailored dark pants and a light blue shirt that brought out his eyes. He looked more like the Ethan Walker from the news articles, but his smile when he saw her was still the same. Warm, genuine, a little shy. "Ready?" he asked, opening the passenger door for her. Nia nodded, smoothing her simple dress self-consciously as she slid into the car. "Where are we going?" "My home first," Ethan said, getting in beside her. "Then maybe dinner somewhere nice, if that's okay?" "Sounds good," Nia said, trying to hide her nervousness. As they drove out of her familiar neighborhood and into the wealthier part of the city, Nia watched the landscape change. Modest buildings giving way to sleek high-rises and exclusive storefronts. Ethan seemed to sense her tension. "It's just a different part of town," he said gently. "Not a different planet," Nia laughed, relaxing a little. "It kind of feels like one." They pulled into an underground garage beneath a modern glass and steel building. The attendant greeted Ethan by name, smiling politely at Nia. In the elevator, Ethan pressed the button for the top floor. "Penthouse?" Nia asked, raising an eyebrow. Ethan had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Yeah." The elevator opened directly into a spacious foyer. Ethan led Nia into his home. A stunning open-concept space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. The decor was modern but warm, with comfortable furniture and art that spoke of careful selection rather than ostentatious display. "This is—" Nia struggled for words as she took in the expansive living area, the gourmet kitchen, the terrace beyond. "Too much?" Ethan asked, watching her reaction anxiously. "Different," Nia settled on, walking to the windows to look out at the view. She could see her neighborhood in the distance, the park where they'd kissed, the river where they'd walked. "It's beautiful." Ethan moved to stand beside her. "It never felt like home until now," he said softly. "With you here." Nia turned to face him, struck by the vulnerability in his expression. This was a side of Ethan she hadn't seen before, the successful businessman in his element, yet still seeking her approval, her acceptance. "Show me the rest?" she asked. Ethan gave her a tour, pointing out details he thought she'd appreciate. A collection of first-edition mystery novels that reminded him of her. A small toy sailboat like the one they'd played with at the park, sitting on a shelf. "You kept this?" she asked, touching the boat gently. "It reminds me of one of the best days of my life," Ethan said simply. In his home office, Nia saw photos of his parents, his brother, the family business. It was a glimpse into the parts of his life he'd kept hidden, and she found herself hungry to know more, to understand all the pieces that made up Ethan Walker. When the tour was complete, they stood in the living room, the city lights beginning to twinkle as evening fell. "What do you think?" Ethan asked, his eyes searching hers. "It's a lovely home," Nia said honestly. "But it's just that, a home. Nice walls, nice things. It doesn't change who you are to me." Relief washed over his face. "That's what I hoped you'd say." He took her hand, leading her to the couch. "There's something else I want to show you." From a drawer he pulled out a plain notebook. "This is the journal I started keeping when I moved into that other apartment. I wrote about what it was like to live differently, about the people I met." He opened to a page with a date she recognized, the day they'd met on the bus. "About you." Nia took the journal with careful hands, reading his neat handwriting. "A woman helped me on the bus today. Just a simple kindness, but it struck me deeply. Her name is Nia, and there's something about her eyes. They see clearly without judgment or agenda. I want to know her better." She continued reading entries that chronicled their growing relationship from his perspective, his delight in her laugh, his admiration for her strength and independence, his growing feelings, and eventually, his guilt over not telling her the full truth. "I almost told her tonight," one entry read. "But she talked about how refreshing it was to be with someone real, and I lost my courage. I'm afraid of losing her, but I'm more afraid of living without her knowing who I truly am. I have to tell her soon." Tears pricked Nia's eyes as she closed the journal. "Thank you for sharing this with me." "No more secrets," Ethan reminded her softly. "No more walls." He reached for her hand again, his touch tender. "Being with you these past weeks has taught me something important, Nia. True wealth isn't in bank accounts or buildings. It's in connections that matter, in being seen for who you really are." Nia squeezed his hand, her heart full. "I'm learning that too." They talked for hours, Ethan answering her questions about his work, his family, his life. He spoke honestly about the privileges he'd had, but also the pressures and expectations that came with his position. Nia shared her own experiences, the challenges of growing up without much money, the determination to stand on her own feet, the dreams she held close to her heart. As night deepened, they ordered takeout instead of going to a fancy restaurant, eating pad thai on his terrace under the stars. It felt natural, comfortable. Despite the luxurious setting, just Nia and Ethan sharing food and conversation, building bridges between their worlds. When it was time for him to drive her home, Nia felt a strange blend of emotions: appreciation for the glimpse into his life, relief that it hadn't changed how she felt about him, and a new understanding of the man she loved. At her door, Ethan kissed her goodnight, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Thank you for today, for seeing all of me and still being here." "Always," Nia promised, returning his kiss with equal feeling. Over the next few weeks, they found their rhythm as a couple with no secrets between them. Ethan showed Nia more of his world, introducing her to Jake more formally, giving her a tour of Walker Enterprises, taking her to a charity gala, where she held her own among the city's elite, her natural grace and intelligence shining through. In turn, Nia welcomed him deeper into her life, weekend brunches with Tasha and other friends, helping Aunt Marla with her community garden project, showing him the small neighborhood library where she'd spent countless hours as a child, dreaming of owning a bookstore someday. One evening, as they walked along the riverfront path that had become their special place, Ethan seemed unusually quiet, lost in thought. "Penny for your thoughts?" Nia asked, nudging him gently with her shoulder. Ethan smiled, coming back to the present. "I was just thinking about how much has changed since we met." "How much I've changed?" "Oh?" Nia raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Before you, I was just going through the motions," Ethan admitted. "The company, the charity work, all of it felt empty somehow. Then you paid my bus fare." He laughed softly at the memory. "And suddenly I had something real." They stopped at their favorite bench, the one where they'd first held hands weeks ago. Ethan took both her hands in his expression serious. "You know I love you," he said. "I love you too," Nia replied, her heart quickening at his tone. "These past weeks have been the happiest of my life," Ethan continued. "And I don't want them to end." "They don't have to," Nia said softly. Ethan took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting security but fearing losing your independence." He squeezed her hands. "I want to help make your dreams come true, Nia. Not as some wealthy benefactor, but as your partner." Nia tilted her head, curious. "What do you mean?" "There's a small storefront for rent near the park," Ethan said, excitement creeping into his voice. "It would be perfect for a bookstore." "Your bookstore?" Nia's eyes widened. "Ethan, before you say anything, hear me out," he said quickly. "It wouldn't be a gift. It would be an investment. In you, in your dream, in our future. A business partnership of sorts. I provide the initial capital. You provide the vision and management. Equal stakes." Nia was quiet, processing his words. The old fear of dependency warred with the dream she'd carried for so long. "I know how important your independence is to you," Ethan said gently. "This wouldn't change that. It would just be a foundation, something we build together." "A foundation," Nia repeated, the word settling in her mind. "Not chains, not obligation, but support. A starting point. Think about it," Ethan urged. "You don't have to answer now." Nia looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but love and respect there. This was not a man trying to buy her affection or control her future. This was a man offering partnership, believing in her dream as much as she did. "I don't need to think about it," she said, making her decision. "Yes, let's build something together." Joy spread across Ethan's face. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. Nia laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You're sure?" Ethan asked, setting her down but keeping her close. "I'm sure," Nia confirmed. "Not because it's easy, but because it's right. For us." Ethan kissed her then, a kiss filled with promise and dreams and plans for a future together. When they parted, both a little breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Thank you for trusting me. With your heart, with your dreams." "Thank you for being trustworthy," Nia replied simply. As they walked hand in hand along the river, making plans and sharing ideas, Nia felt a deep sense of rightness. This was what true partnership looked like, not one person lifting the other up, but two people standing strong together, building something greater than either could alone. 3 months later, on a crisp winter morning, Chapters and Chance's bookstore opened its doors for the first time. The small space had been transformed into a warm, inviting haven for book lovers, comfortable chairs in cozy corners, carefully curated selections on polished shelves, and a small coffee bar in the back serving Rosie's special blend. Nia stood behind the counter, taking it all in. Her dream, made real through hard work, vision, and yes, Ethan's partnership. But it was undeniably hers. Her taste in the decor, her selections on the shelves, her name on the ownership papers alongside his. Ethan moved to stand beside her, pride evident in his eyes as he looked around the store. "It's perfect," he said, slipping an arm around her waist. "Just like you imagined." "Better," Nia corrected, leaning into him. "Because we did it together." Aunt Marla bustled in from the back room, carrying a tray of freshly baked cookies for the opening day customers. "Almost time to open," she reminded them. Since retiring from her job the previous month, with a generous pension supplemented by a consultation fee from Walker Enterprises for her expert gardening advice, Marla had thrown herself into helping with the bookstore. Tasha arrived next, carrying balloons and a handmade sign for the window. "This place is amazing, Nia," she said, hugging her friend tightly. "I'm so proud of you." Jake was the last to arrive, bringing a bottle of champagne for later. He'd warmed considerably to Nia over the months, seeing how genuinely happy she made his brother. "Ready?" Ethan asked as the clock neared opening time. Nia took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." Together they unlocked the door and flipped the sign to "Open." Within minutes, curious neighbors and passers-by began to trickle in, exclaiming over the beautiful space and browsing the shelves. Nia moved among them, recommending books and explaining her vision for the store, a community space where stories could be shared and new chapters begun. By mid-afternoon, the store was buzzing with activity. Nia was helping a young mother find books for her children when the door chimed again. She looked up to see a familiar face, the bus driver from that fateful day when she and Ethan had first met. "Well, look at this," the driver said, glancing around appreciatively. "A nice place you got here." "Thank you," Nia replied with a warm smile. "Can I help you find something?" "Just browsing," the driver said. "My daughter loves to read. Thought I might find her something special." As Nia showed him to the young adult section, Ethan approached, recognition dawning in his eyes. "You're the bus driver," he said, extending his hand. "From Route 17 a few months back." The driver looked confused for a moment, then his face cleared. "Oh yeah, the guy with the card that wouldn't work." He shook Ethan's hand, then glanced between him and Nia. "You two know each other." Ethan wrapped an arm around Nia's shoulders, his smile radiant. "She's the love of my life," he said simply. The driver's eyebrows rose. "No kidding? All because of a bus fare?" "All because of kindness," Nia corrected gently, leaning into Ethan's embrace. Later, after helping the driver find a perfect book for his daughter, and insisting he take it as a gift, Nia and Ethan found a quiet moment together in the back office. "What a day," Nia said. "Exhausted but happy." "The first of many," Ethan promised, pulling her into his arms. "I'm so proud of you, Nia. You've made your dream come true." "We did," she corrected him. "And it's just the beginning." Ethan's eyes grew serious as he looked down at her. "I hope so," he said softly. "Because there's another dream I've been thinking about lately." "What's that?" Nia asked, curious. Instead of answering, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Nia's breath caught in her throat as he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring, a single diamond set in rose gold. "Beautiful without being flashy." "Nia Brooks," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You paid my bus fare when I was a stranger. You saw me, the real me, when I was hiding from the world. You taught me what true wealth looks like." He took a shaky breath. "Will you marry me? Not for what I have, but for who we are together." Tears filled Nia's eyes as she looked at the man before her. No longer a stranger, no longer a secret millionaire, but simply Ethan, the man who had captured her heart with his kindness, his honesty and his love. "Yes," she whispered, her heart too full for more elaborate words. "Yes," as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like a promise of partnership, of truth, of a future built on the strongest foundation of all, Love that sees beyond circumstances to the heart of who we truly are. 1 year later, Nia and Ethan boarded a city bus together, laughing as they climbed the steps. The bus was crowded, just as it had been that first day, but this time they found seats together near the front. "Remember the last time we were on one of these together?" Ethan asked, his arm around her shoulders. "How could I forget?" Nia replied, the diamond on her finger catching the light as she reached up to adjust his scarf. "You were so embarrassed when your card didn't work." "Best malfunction of my life," Ethan said with a grin. The bus driver, who happened to be the same man from that day, recognized them and chuckled. "You got the fare this time?" he joked as Ethan tapped his card on the reader. "Always," Ethan replied with a smile, paying for both of them. As the bus pulled away from the curb, Nia leaned against Ethan's shoulder, contentment washing over her. So much had changed in a year. The bookstore was thriving. She and Ethan had moved into a new home together, a compromise between his penthouse and her modest apartment, and in 3 months they would be husband and wife. Yet some things remained beautifully the same. The connection between them, strengthened by honesty and trust, the way his eyes still lit up when he looked at her, the certainty that they were building a life together that honored both their worlds. "Happy?" Ethan asked softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "More than I ever thought possible," Nia replied truthfully. Outside the window, the city rolled by, the streets where they'd walked, the park where they'd kissed, the cafe where they'd shared coffee, the bookstore they'd built together. Their story, written across the landscape of their shared life, a life that had begun with the simplest act of kindness, a bus fare paid without hesitation or expectation, and had grown into something beautiful, enduring and true. As they rode together toward their future, Nia thought about how the smallest gestures can sometimes lead to the greatest loves, how bridges between different worlds can be built with honesty and respect, how true wealth isn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the courage to be vulnerable, to trust, and to love without reservation. And as Ethan's hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally as they had so many times before, Nia knew that they would face whatever came next, exactly as they had faced everything else. Together, with open hearts and the unshakable foundation of a love built on truth. The end.